This video is an advertisement, technically. I'm going to explain at the end of the video what that means and why I've had to say it. But for now, let's talk about what you're here for, which is the new Exo Terra T5 lamps that you've probably seen advertised online. And the truth is, this is an informational video, so it's designed to teach you about these lamps. Let's go. My job is pretty unique. I'm an animal welfare, husbandry and lighting consultant, and I work with zoos and private clients all around the world. I have clients in New Zealand, Canada, Australia, Europe, even the US, and of course the UK. And on top of that, I'm a research and development consultant for the production of animal products, including things like life support systems and foods, but with a primary focus on lighting. You probably already know that bit. And about 20 or so months ago now, I was approached by Exo Terra to work on something with them. They asked me to help them with the development of a brand new T5 lighting system for UVB for animals. It was an interesting proposal, and I just had to get involved. We had a chat and we decided on some base rules if we were going to go on this venture together. First, the lamps needed to be made in the same factories that had worked on developing special chemical and glass blends, and they had to be based in Europe. Secondly, the lamps had to be made in a facility that focused on specialist lighting, and was medical grade in its production and quality control. Third, if I was going to get involved, the lamps had to be something that I was proud to be a part of, as well as Exo Terra, of course. And fourth, the lamps had to be an improvement on existing products. There was no point in doing more of the same. And thus, it was agreed. At Damascus HQ, I like to give my projects silly names. It makes me feel like a secret agent. And this project was given the working title, Project Solar Pure, because the idea was to create a pure solar-like spectrum. I know, bit cheesy. Work began straight away, and we approached factories and brokers based all over, and we asked them to send us their best-in-class lamps. And they all had one commonality, an unnatural, disproportionate level of UVB to UVA. Let me try and show you with some visuals. Here's a super simple graph, and I've labelled it with some broad categories. This section is marked with an X. These are undesirable short wavelengths of UVB, and if you want a technical definition, I'd consider these 290 to 295 nanometers. This section is what we'll consider sun-like UVB. It's around 295 to 320 nanometers for the technical people. And this section I've labelled with UVA, specifically UVA2. UVA2 is a vital part of the solar spectrum. It plays a really important role in vitamin D3 synthesis, but also plays a really vital role in positive animal welfare. And here's what the sun looks like here on Earth. You can see that there's loads more UVA2 than there is UVB in sunlight. And you can see the start of measurable UVB is around here. Now let's take a look at the current world-leading UVB reptile lamps. If I show you, you can see that they sort of do a pretty decent job, but they do have some of these shorter wavelengths measurable, and the proportions of UVB to UVA2 are just not the same as sunlight. So this is what we set out to improve. If you're going to make a UVB lamp, you may as well focus on this part of the spectrum. And it wasn't easy. We had chemicals and phosphors from all over with calculations on proportions and expected spectral results. I'm pretty sure at one point the factory presumed we were doing it on purpose to try and torture ourselves. But after loads of calculations and a heavy amount of trial and error, we did something we were pretty happy with. We'd gone from this to this. We'd removed those shorter wavelengths and just look at that UVA2. This means we'd done exactly what we set out to do. The lamp was made in Europe. It was made in a facility that focuses on specialist medical grade lighting. It was something we were proud to make, and it also matched UVB and UVA2 more closely than anything else we'd ever seen. We made a few small batches and started putting them to work, and I've even got around to installing them in a few zoos. In fact, this video is just part 1 of 3. Parts 2 and 3 will also be semi-informational, but will also be kind of a behind-the-scenes or vlog-style look into how we go about installing these lamps into professional settings. And it will show how we've made positive welfare changes by installing these lamps. They're currently being used over Komodo dragons, crocodiles, chameleons, and a whole host of birds and mammals. And we'll have videos of all of that, the trials and tribulations of installing in a zoo, the fun that we have when we're installing lamps, and it'll all be in a fairly relaxed format, and it'll be right here on this channel. So if you want to see something like that, consider subscribing. It's safe to say that this last 20 months has been a pretty fun adventure. Exo Terra took this special blend, copyrighted it under the name Synergy, and then installed it into 3 lamps. They've launched the Exo Terra UVB100, which is a 3% low output lamp, designed for use with cryptic or crepuscular species, kind of focuses on one style stuff. There's the UVB200, which is your medium output lamp. That's designed for forest-dwelling species or focuses on 2 animals. And they also have the UVB300, which is the highest output lamp. It's designed for focuses on 3 or 4 species, like some tortoises and bearded dragons and uromastics. The tubes are a T5, and they come in all the standard wattages. That's 8, 24, 39, and 54 watts. And this means they're 100% compatible with most of the existing fixtures that people commonly use. So people don't need to go and buy a whole new fixture and start wiring it in just to use these lamps. They can use their existing fixtures. And for people who don't have an existing fixture, Exo Terra have made one of those too. I had a little bit of a say in the design of the Reflector actually. Something that really bugs me about most of the existing fixtures is that they aren't really designed for use with animals. They're actually an off-the-shelf Chinese hydroponic lamp fixture. And the brands buy them, stamp them with a logo, and then they get shipped out with a UVB tube. And because of that, these lamps have an intrinsic property that is the same across most of them. And that is that they are actually quite narrow in their output. If you take a look at one down the length of it, the output is very narrow straight down. If an animal is just 1 or 2 inches down to the left or the right, they may not be being exposed to the UVB that you think they are. However, the Exo Terra fixture is made to a bespoke mould, and although the Reflector doesn't seem very different, it's actually designed ever so slightly differently to spread that UVB out into a wider shape. The difference isn't really noticeable with your eyes, but when you measure it, you can really see the difference in the output of UVB. And it's a nice approach to mitigate the problems that we tend to see with hydroponic fixtures. What this means is that although the punch down of UVB into the enclosure isn't quite as far, the width of the beam is much better, so if an animal is sat maybe under a heat lamp to the side, they're still being exposed to UVB. That's something that doesn't tend to happen with the hydroponic fixtures. So it works really well in a real life setup. Safe to say, this has been a big project. And it's been something that's been part of my day-to-day life for the last 20 months. The lamps have featured in some trade magazines, and there's quite some hype in the zoo world about them as well. And I'm finally glad to be able to share my excitement about them. There's some fully independent reports available on my website for anyone wanting more technical detail or a closer look at the spectrum. But whilst we're here, we may as well look at some of the common questions that I've been asked and I've seen asked on Facebook pages, Reddit groups, and indeed by email as well. Does this tube fit into my XYZ fixture? This is something a lot of people are scared of, and it's not just an Exo Terra thing, they're scared of it across the board. Many people don't realise the lamps are actually generally interchangeable between the brands. Just because you've bought the fixture from one brand doesn't mean you need to keep using their tubes. For example, if you currently have a 24 watt T5 fixture from another brand, you could install an Exo Terra 24 watt tube into that fixture. So, providing the wattage is the same and the length of the lamp is the same, yes, these are compatible with your existing fixtures. Why 14% on the UVB300? The percentage value on boxes tends to be quite misleading, and it's not something you should use to compare between brands. One brand may have a 5% lamp that is the equivalent of another brand's 12% lamp. So when comparing percentages, just compare it within the same product line. And often when we actually measure lamps from well-known brands, they tend not to emit the percentage that's on the box anyway. The UVB300 lamp emits approximately 14% of its output as UVB. That's a way of showing that it's designed to be a higher output lamp compared to the UVB200 or the UVB100. That's how those percentages work. How bright are they? Great question, and the answer is not super bright. Actually, as part of the development for the phosphor blend like Synergy, we're limited on the amount of chemicals we can use, and we have to balance those chemicals very carefully. In order to make improvements to the UVB and the UVA2 that I showed, we need to take away some of the chemicals that are used to produce visible light. And by taking those chemicals away, the lamp doesn't emit as much visible light. So the new Exo Terra lamps do emit visible light, but it's not quite as bright as some of the competitors. But there is method to this madness. Remember, we all agree that when we're lighting our animals, the aim is to try and replicate proportional levels like they would find in a basking area in sunlight. And to achieve that, I never recommend just using a fluorescent T5 tube and a heat lamp. That's from any brand. If you're using just a fluorescent T5 lamp and just a heat lamp and you think that's a basking area, I promise you it's not a bright basking area. And I have articles on the website about why it's important to have a bright basking area. I always recommend at least adding some sort of high quality LED to your basking area. The aim of the LED is to provide bright visible light. It's a specialist lamp. The same way your heat lamp is to provide infrared A, it's a specialist lamp. The UVB that you're providing from your T5 is a specialist use, so the lamp should be focused on that specialist purpose. These T5s aren't supposed to be specialists in visible light, so why focus on making that bit so refined? They were never designed for that purpose. Stick to your T5 for your UVB. That's what everybody uses them for. How long do they last? As with all T5s, you should follow the manufacturer's guidance. So in this case, it's a 12-month lifespan minimum. And you may get a longer lifespan if you measure with a Solarmeter 6.5 to measure the decay. But if you don't have a Solarmeter 6.5, 12 months like every other brand. Are they available in my country? How much? I don't actually work for Exo Terra or Hagen or any of the other brands. My company Damascus is a completely independent research and development consultancy. So as much as I can answer technical questions about how the lamp works and the kind of spectrum it emits, I don't actually know anything about the retail outlets, so you're much better off getting in touch with your retailers or your stockists for that kind of information. When are they available? Again, this is something you'd have to ask your retailers or Exo Terra. You can actually reach out to them on social media. Tom, you told us this was an advertisement. Why on earth should we believe a word you're saying? That's a really good question, and you have every right to hold that position. So, I want to be upfront. I was paid as a consultant to work on the development of this phosphor, the Synergy blend, and I made money by developing the phosphor. That's my job as a research and development consultant. But I've not made any money from this video or the other 2 videos where you're going to see us installing them into zoos. I'm a bit of a sucker for the fine print. And in the UK we have some pretty in-depth regulation about advertising. The Committee of Advertising Practice, the Advertising Standards Agency, and the Competition Markets Authority all have something to say about advertising and how you market your products. At least in the UK, which is where I'm based. There's some interesting rules set by the ASA into what they consider payment when posting things on social media. Under their definitions, if an influencer receives any free products from a company, even without the company expecting anything to be posted online, then it's considered payment. And if someone receives any form of payment, they have to disclose the post as an advertisement. Again, and this is really important, this is the case even if the company didn't have any editorial decisions over the content or didn't even ask the person to post it in the first place. It must still be disclosed as an advertisement. And the video you're watching features products that were part of a research and development program, but also products for my own use. And I was given them for free. So under the technical definition, I received payment, and thus this video must be disclosed to you as an advertisement. There's some subreddits, WhatsApp groups, and even Facebook chats dedicated to calling out brands in the UK that do not abide by ASA guidance. And some of them are UK reptile brands. I do think that's a video for another day though, maybe a blog post. The videos you'll see where we install Exo Terra lamps into zoo enclosures were funded by Exo Terra. By that I mean they paid for travel, hotel, they paid for me to hire a videographer and an editor, but neither me nor my company Damascus Limited made any sort of profit from producing these videos. And there's no money made from the sale of these lamps or any sort of commission based on clicks through links or anything like that. I don't make any money. I've made my money on these lamps. I'm just genuinely proud of the work that I've put in, that we've put in on this project. And I've learned so much doing it. I genuinely think these lamps replicate sunlight in the areas of UVB and UVA2 better than any other lamps on the market. So yes, Mr. ASA investigation expert on WhatsApp and Reddit, this is technically an advertisement, but that's why I've disclosed it as such. But everything I've said and the work I've put in is mine and mine alone. Okay, rant over. I hope that this video has answered some of the most popular questions that I've seen online, and I hope it's given you some valuable information on UVB, on lighting, and how you can look at upgrading your animal's welfare based on replicating UVB and UVA2 in your enclosures. If you want to see something specific explained in parts 2 or 3, leave a comment down below. We've still got time to film extra bits if we need to. We'll be editing those together over the next couple of weeks, and they'll hopefully be online very soon. But for now, I have got to get back to it, so I will see you when I see you.